You're not going to believe what classic Yu-Gi-Oh cards we got caught seeing play with this weekend. Make sure you guys smash the other living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. BYSER Shock. Now this is a card that sends terrors down people's spines, as this is one of the coolest classic old cards in the game. And BYSER Shock actually showed up in a Chimera Illusion deck over the weekend here as a side deck option, and you look at BYSER Shock, you're like, wait, what? This card actually does things? Yes, it does. BYSER Shock, so it's a level 5, but on summon, it doesn't matter if it's on special, on normal. If this card touches down to the field, you return all set cards on the field to the hand. That is everything. Spells and traps and monsters alike. So what happens out here on maybe an interaction of, oh, hey, you know, a Book of Eclipse just resolved and you now deploy BYSER Shock. And now what happens to all of those monsters? Oh, they're all generically suddenly outed by this. Okay, well, you know, you also have Labyrinth application with this as well, because if your opponent has 5 set back row, you slam this down on the table, well, they have to either chain all of their back row or get them spun back to the hand for the turn, which now gives you the chance to play the game. I think that's wonderful. Also, I mean, you start getting into the other half of the interactions with it also being a Dark Fiend monster. So, you know, you can dump it automatically to the graveyard, and all of a sudden, you know, we have an entire new application for this card as it's now accessible from the graveyard. I am shocked that this card actually saw play. It has been so long. But with Book of Eclipse kind of coming back into the format, whether or not you're choosing to play it, you have multiple uses for this card. So I think that that's actually something really, really cool. Let's give it up, everybody. BYSER Shock, the classic Yu-Gi-Oh card doing its thing. Now, we got to talk about King Tiger WANGHU over here as well. Now, many of you probably remember WANGHU from, you know, past formats. I mean, the card has been a pretty strong contender out here in a lot of the past metagames. Let's call it what it is. But it is a beast monster, and that is massively, massively important to the Chimera Illusion deck, because guess what? You have another monster that's a walking, talking floodgate. Yeah. You know how many times back in the day that this card, people are like, well, can I still activate my ignition effect on the summon? Yes. Yes, you can. All right. All this thing says is when a monster or monsters with 1500 or less attack is normal summon or special summon, destroy those monsters with 1400 or less attack. God, I love that PSET. This card must be face up in the field to activate and resolve this effect. The only thing that this card is useful for is whatever your opponent is attempting to summon, you can set up all of your Albaz / Guardian Chimera / you know, Chimera the illusionary fun stuff cards, and congratulations, you can plop this guy on out. Now your opponent's going to have to deal with this. There's actually saw a decent amount of play in Japan for a little while as a side deck option, but it just kind of rode off into the sunset after a little while. I mean, a majority of the Chimera Illusion stuff in Japan did stop seeing play, but this is not the first time that we've seen this. So as we do see this deck continue to gain a lot more play as of late, I think you are going to have to be aware that this is going to be something that you do need to worry about. If you're like, oh, well, you know, my deck doesn't have 1400 or less attack point monsters. I don't play pathetic monsters in my deck. Some of those best weak monsters are going to get floodgated by this. Plus, there's probably going to be some sort of boss monster standing right next to this little guy, patting him on the head, telling him he's doing a good job. So, yeah, King Tiger WANGHU out here getting a massive, huge boost in play. Next up is Renbroom, the Striking Dragon. Now, you might not remember Renbroom here as, you know, a crazy sought-after Fallen Albaz card. You might remember great stars like Mirjade, Lubellion, Albion, but not Renbroom. And people forget that Renbroom says a Fallen Albaz plus a Beast Warrior Wing Beast monster. So, guess what? The Chimera stuff also has other types in the archetype besides, you know, illusion. But when a fusion, synchro, or link monster effect is activated, quick effect, you can negate that effect, then you can return one monster on the field to the hand. Okay. During your opponent's turn, when this card is in your graveyard, quick effect and target a Fallen of Albaz in your graveyard. Special summon either that monster to the field and banish the other, blah, blah, blah. Ah, boy, oh boy. So what you're telling me here is I can make this via the branded fusion. I can drop down some of the other resources in my deck. King Tiger WANGHU being another classic example, and congratulations, we've now bridged the gap even further beyond with the Chimera Illusion deck. Yup, and I know I have people that have been questioning why Rin Broom has been going up in price. It's because it is a card that sees play in this deck. It makes this deck go round. The entire, you splash in the Fallen of Albaz as the brand of fusions, maybe the Edge Imp stuff, depending on how spicy, you know, you're trying to get in terms of the deck build, and congratulations, you have this pile of cards that is actually able to work. And people are just like, I don't get it at the end of the day. Well, that's the Chimera innovations for you. All right, the deck continues to evolve at a pretty quick pace, actually, and I don't know why people are kind of shocked that we've been seeing so much play out here with the illusion stuff. It's not like the deck is really bad or anything. Next up is Fusion Armament here, and this has been pretty interesting to see because we've actually gone back in a time capsule here where you're seeing the actual vanilla Chimera seeing play at this point in time, and you've probably looked at how this deck has functioned. You're probably like, whoa, you know, like, why would I want to dedicate, you know, bad slots to, you know, the Chimera deck? Well, getting the ability to have actual Chimera, the fusion mythical beast vanilla monster, well, it's not really vanilla, it does have an effect, but that doesn't matter at the end of the day. The fact that you can just pull it out of the extra deck with Fusion Armament for kind of no cost whatsoever is kind of nice. And I can't attack, its effects are negated, blah, 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 but I don't care about that. I care that this is another access point for another fusion material that you can bring out onto the field depending on what you need to do. Now, has every crazy Chimera illusion, you know, pile started going towards this? No. I actually feel that this has been a little bit more niche as of late. And that's not to say that you can't explore a lot of the options that you can do with this deck. But the point is, hey, be aware that they can bring out the regular Chimera. They can use the Chimera then as an additional stepping stone. And once they kind of get things going at that point in time, they're able to, well, we've established our board. I mean, what are we worried about at that point in time? I don't know. The Illusion deck, all of these tech choices that we've seen spinning around here that are changing the very core dynamic of the game, you know, whether or not it just be making the builds easier to play or, you know, shaking things up. With BYSER Shock, you've got a lot of things going on out here. And that does prove that, hey, you know, the meta is evolving at an incredibly strong pace. And that's pretty amazing in and itself. Last thing I want to talk about here, since we are talking about old things here, is the overall impact of Unchained. I've been talking about Unchained literally every single video at this point in time. And it amazes me that people look at Unchained and they're like, oh, you know, like, I'll be able to beat this deck relatively easily. This deck has enough extensions. I've seen this deck play through hand traps, but I've also seen this deck lose to the most brittle Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, where they just didn't have enough extenders to continue to play. And I do attribute this deck to being some of the reason why Labyrinth has been getting bumped around a little bit. You know, and I've actually talked to a couple Labyrinth players and like, yeah, Unchained is not a fun matchup for anybody. All right, the deck is kind of ignorant, especially in that matchup. It's because, you know, oh boy, all of a sudden Labyrinth's blowing things up. Well, there's the fourth Unchained effect that's resolved at this point in time, and then all they've got to do is get, you know, one monster set up to go ahead and start doing the link summons with, and all of a sudden the Labyrinth player finds themselves not with a field. The deck does not care about back row as much, and I mean, a well-timed Solemn Strike can hurt. There are choke points to the deck. That's why I mentioned the Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. But this deck has been a very scary deck, and it is something that you're going to continue to need to know how to play against in the current meta. If you think you're going to get away with, you know, a top and you're, like, not going to play Unchained, you're going to do yourself a disservice, all right? This deck is very much in the meta, and it's going to continue to do things. So, what do you think about these goodies? Please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. I'll see your beautiful faces back here later today, guys. Peace out. Patrons. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.